Pues en 300 es un buen número para arrancar.
So 300 is a good number to get started.
Buenas tardes a todos. Tenemos
Good afternoon, everybody.
300
At this time, we have 300 people joining us for this event. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 6th annual meeting of Manejo Regenerativo de Ranchos Asociación Civil. We have called this a virtual event 2021. This will be lectures, testimonials, and roundtables for 2 days, today and tomorrow. It's exactly 2:10 p.m. right now in Chihuahua, Mexico. I hope you didn't have any connection problems to join us on this Zoom platform that everybody is so used to. And dear friends, as in everything, there are some housekeeping rules. The first one is all the microphones and cameras are going to be off so as to prevent any echo and feedback that may affect the quality of the broadcast. Number two, questions and comments that you may need to ask, make sure that you enter them in the Q&A box, and they will be read and ordered by the director of MRR, Diana Chavez Echechuri. And third, today, we will have simultaneous interpretation from English to Spanish and vice versa, Spanish to English. So if you click on the interpretation icon, you will be able to select the language that you want to listen in. If you don't select any options, you will always hear the original audio of the speaker. If you have any difficulty selecting the language, you can play with the options until you become familiar with them. I would like to thank the sponsorship of a group of companies that year after year support us to bring this event to fruition. Grupo Biotecap, La Lagartija, M&A Mexico, Gallagher, with systems and equipment, Simpro, Semillas Pura Sangre, the Correcaminos company, Hora Publicidad, that's the company that every year supports us in our annual meeting. HG Group with their Toyota, Kia, and Subaru cars, and Pollo Feliz, the tastiest chicken with 800 branches. Thank you to all the sponsors for their support in this event. And before we get started, I'm going to ask our president, Gerardo Diaz, to welcome everybody. Gerardo, please go ahead. Thank you, Benito. Thank you, everybody. Welcome, everybody. It is a great pleasure to have so many people wanting to learn from the speakers of this annual meeting, our 6th annual meeting of regenerative ranch management, Manejo Regenerativo de Ranchos. This meeting belongs to everybody. Everybody should feel that they are part of this event because we all do it, because we all learn. Anybody who has the great benefit of learning something new is welcome to join us in Manejo Regenerativo de Ranchos. And first of all, I would like to say thank you and thank the speakers, the organizing committee. Thank you so much. The followers of Manejo Regenerativo de Ranchos, thank you for continuing to learn along with us. We have always been part of several chats to continue to learn. We have to keep learning and always try to learn from practical knowledge. So things that work and that get to the producer or the rancher, the one who lives with the cows and works the soil. Thank you, everybody. Welcome. Thank you again to our sponsors who make it all possible. And everything we do and the philosophy and the essence of what we have learned, both from Johan Zietsmann and Jaime Elizondo, has been or will be for the health of the soil and the pasture of the world. We believe that ranching is a great tool because in addition to being a business, it regenerates and it takes in carbon better than anything else. So welcome. And we want to give the floor to Mr. Johan Zietsmann. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Gerardo. So let us move on to the first presentation for today. And it's Mr. Johan Zietsmann. Johan Zietsmann is a zootechnista engineer. He lives in Zambia in South Africa, from where he's joining us today. And before we have him speak, I'm going to read a small reflection that you will find at the beginning of his book. And it says, I'm one of those fortunate people who very early on knew what he wanted to do. I felt predestined to find practical solutions to improve the grassland and productivity in ranching with minimal human intervention so that I could turn the grassland into quality meat, quality beef. I never knew this would be such a long journey. With so much, there was a lot of learning and many mistakes were made before I understood enough about man, cattle, and grassland in order to create a symbiotic relationship. A very deep message from Johan. His participation today is about genetics, and it's about body condition and hormonal balance. Welcome, Johan Zietsmann. We're very happy to have you with us. Please go ahead.
Muchas gracias, Benito. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's evening here in Zambia, and it's good afternoon for you in Latin America. Unfortunately, we can't be all together as we have been in the last few years. At least we can communicate. What I'm going to talk about is the importance of hormonal balance and body condition. And those are the two attributes that I believe are missing in our cattle today. So I'm going to share with you a slide presentation, and then I'll be speaking to you via the slides. Yeah. Can I share the slide presentation?
Yes, please go ahead.
It says disabled participant screen sharing. Okay.
Give me 1 second then.
Okay.
Could you please try again now?
Just hang on a minute. Okay, let me just go back a little bit. Okay, hopefully that is visible to everyone. So my talk will be about body condition and hormonal balance. This, I believe, is the missing dimension in cattle breeding and management. Because everything that we build on must be on a foundation of hormonal balance and body condition. The problem is man's attitude. We can either take the complex route as scientists, where we use computers and figures to try and breed productive cattle, or we can take the opposite view and in terms of what a herdsman would do through observation. So I believe that what we are lacking today is observation. We can get too complex by using figures. Scientific selection and aggravated natural selection, as you see on the right-hand side there. Scientific selection is a Bonswara bull that you see on the left-hand side. Conventionally, a very good bull. But what is that bull better than the one on the right-hand side? The bull on the right-hand side has no pedigree, registered pedigree. He has no performance figures, but through observation, he was selected and saved from being slaughtered and used in my brother's herd. Again, we can either use the complicated route of figures, or we can use our eyes and observe what we see in front of us. The problem with figures is that if we look at too much detail, how do we put that detail together again? I believe it's impossible for man to have all those figures and put all those figures together into something that we require. I believe it's much easier to take to look at the whole and work from there and observe which are the better cattle. If we just look at the history of cattle breeding, and we look at the figure on the left-hand side, 1950s Brahman and the 1980s Brahman, very, very big difference. And I believe we've made no progress. In fact, we've been going backwards all the time. So somewhere along the line, man is making a big mistake. If we look at figures in Southern Africa, this is from the Omageni Research Station in Namibia, where over a 12-year period, they tested the fertility of two breeds. The Nguni, which is an indigenous breed, so-called unimproved, and the Bonsmara, which is a scientifically improved breed. And if you could look at the fertility figures on the driest year on record, the Nguni had a 79% conception rate, and the Bonsmara 63%. And the weaning production per unit of land, the Nguni was 565 kilograms, as opposed to the Bonsmara 4462. So what we can see from these figures is that the unimproved breeds, the naturally selected breeds, are far more productive than the scientifically selected breeds. The problem with scientific selection is that we're using criteria that are contrary to, in particular, to inherent body condition. And that is why the Bonsmara has such a lower reproduction rate under difficult conditions because of body condition. It's bigger, better. If you look at the bull on the left-hand side and we see the one on the right-hand side, which is the bull in China, is bigger, better? That is the question. The figures here, I hope you can see, are the energy requirements for a kilogram's day, again, for different size animals, 2, 3, 4, and 500 kilogram animals, and different growth rates, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5 kilograms gain per day. And if you look at the red figures there, that scenario, the different growth rate and different size, is equal efficiency. In other words, what it means is that at a similar growth rate, let's take 0.5 kilograms at the bottom, at similar growth rate, the smaller individual, smaller frame animal is far more efficient than the larger animal. If you look at the 200 kilogram compared to the 500 kilogram, the difference is 100% in efficiency. 86 units per kilogram gain at a certain growth rate for a certain size, as opposed to 164. So we cannot use absolute growth as a measure of efficiency of grass conversion. We have to look at we have to look at maturity rate. And the conclusions you can come to from those figures are the faster an individual animal gains weight, the more efficient. If I go back, if you take a 500 kilogram animal, the faster it gains, the more efficient it is. Similarly for a smaller animal, 200 kilograms, the faster it gains, if it gains 0.5 kilograms, it's twice as efficient as when it's gaining 0.2 kilograms. So individual weight gain is extremely important. But that does not mean to say that the fastest gaining animal in a herd is the most efficient animal, because you have a big variation in frame size within any herd. So we cannot use growth rate or absolute growth rate as a measure of efficiency. The second one is at the same gain, the smaller individual is more efficient. Let's take 0.3 kilograms gain. The smaller animal, the 200 kilogram animal, efficiency would be 123 units required, as opposed to the larger animal, 500 kilograms, would require just about double, 240 units of energy for a kilogram of gain. The third conclusion we can come to is that in order to be equally efficient, animals of varying size have to grow in proportion to their size. So they have to grow in proportion to their size. As you can see there from those red figures, that's growth in proportion to size. 200 kilograms at 0.2 is as efficient as 300 kilograms gaining 0.3, 400 kilograms gaining 0.4, and 500 kilogram animal gaining 0.5. So it's in direct proportion to size. But the problem is that although animals have to grow in proportion to their size, they cannot eat in proportion to their size. So the larger animal, although it eats more, grazes more, in proportion to its size, it grazes less. It ingests less. So the relative intake is much smaller for a large animal as opposed to a smaller animal. So it's very important to understand that. So have we made progress? If you look at those, the figures, the pictures I have of show animals there, I would definitely say we have made no progress. We've changed the genotype, but we've made no progress. The best we've done is produce animals that require better nutrition in order to be productive. But accidentally, we've made progress. If you look at the animal on the left-hand side, accidentally, she was served at 8 months of age, and she calved at 17 months of age. The animal on the left was accidentally served at a young age, and at the age of 5 years, she produced 5 calves. So it just shows what our cattle are capable of. But man is hindering that progress by the way we select our cattle and the way we look at our cattle in terms of performance. What is important is that one is a goal. We have to, whatever your goal is, will determine what breeding and management practices you employ. And I think we have to make a big paradigm change in the cattle industry. We have to set our goal at maximum sustainable profit per hectare, as opposed to profit or production per animal. Currently, the conventional goal is production per animal. And if that is our goal, there's no chance that we can use our animals to improve the land and get maximum sustainability and maximum profit from our land. Second, very important thing to understand is that cattle have a dual role. Firstly, they have to efficiently convert grass into beef. And secondly, we have to use those same cattle to improve the land. In other words, we have to use them at high densities, graze non-selectively, and use animal impact to improve the land. And this is where body condition becomes a determining factor, inherent body condition. The third factor that's very important to understand is that stocking rate is the most important management factor determining profit. By far more important than any other attribute that cattle require. And the fourth one, obviously, is fertility is the most important trait determining profit. Now, both those, stocking rate and fertility, what's important for those factors and traits is that we need cattle that have a high inherent body condition. If they have a poor inherent body condition, as they currently have, we have to feed them. And that impacts negatively on our profit per hectare and the sustainability of our system. We have to mimic nature. In that photograph, which was taken on the just west of where I live here on the plains of Zambia, that side between the Zambezi River and the Angolan border, that is a herd of wildebeest grazing at very high densities, being controlled by hyena and a lion. So we have to mimic that. And that is one of the easier things in terms of what we can do in terms of management. Non-selective grazing and high animal impact has a dramatic positive effect on our land, but it has a negative effect on body condition. And that is where inherent body condition becomes very important. So the challenge is body condition. One, genotype. We have to have cattle with a high relative intake. And all animals with a high relative intake require a smaller frame. The smaller the frame is, the higher the intake is, relative to size. Secondly, climatic adaptation will have a positive or negative influence on intake, as will disease and parasite resistance. So all those factors of overall adaptation is extremely important. And the fourth one is that appetite, individual appetite. You can get animals of the same frame size, equal adaptation and resistance to parasites and diseases. But some animals just have a higher appetite. And those are the animals that we require, that have a relatively small frame, or overall adapted, and have a high appetite. And that is what will be reflected in high inherent body condition. Secondly, management. We can manage for better body condition through rumen supplementation, which is very important. A high stock density with frequent moves has a positive effect on body condition. If we put animals into a paddock for a week, we would have a much poorer utilization, and at the end of the week, poorer body condition than if we subdivided that week into 7 daily moves, in other words, 50 moves for that week. So high stock density and frequent moves have a positive influence on body condition. And then obviously also preferential grazing for high requirement classes. And in this instance, I'm thinking particularly of pregnant yearling heifers that are going to calve at 2 years of age. If we put them amongst a herd of mature cows, they will have poor performance and they will lose a lot more body condition than if we allowed them to graze selectively ahead of the main herd. The third factor is calving on green grass. It's extremely important because body condition at calving determines the conception rate, the reconception rate. So we need to calve on green grass. And the fourth factor, which can be very important, particularly on poor quality grazing and with animals that still have a conventionally bred with poor inherent body condition, is 4-month weaning. That will help body condition of cows. The genetic determinants of fertility are inherent body condition and hormonal balance. It's very simple. And both inherent body condition and hormonal balance are highly heritable. So fertility, practical fertility, is highly heritable. Inherent body condition, as I mentioned earlier, is determined by relative intake and is reflected in high intake, a good grass conversion efficiency, and it will be reflected obviously in body condition. Hormonal balance is the balance between sex and growth hormones. We need to have a good balance. If we overemphasize growth and size, then we have a reduction in sex hormones and we have a lowered fertility. So both hormonal balance and inherent body condition are essential, and they are the foundation of all the other traits that we select for. If we look at the influence of size and intake on conception rate and intake, you can see there the larger animal, 600 kilogram cow, for instance, if it has an intake of 2% of body weight, the smaller cow that's 300 kilograms will have a 2.4% intake relative to size. So that reflects a better body condition. The equivalent would be for the 300 kilogram cow, body condition score of 1 to 5 would be 2.9. And for the 600 kilogram cow, or the larger cow, would be 2.4. And that again reflects in conception rate. 90% for the small cow, as opposed to 70% for the larger cow, under exactly the same conditions. Frame size and body condition. We can see it very clearly. Any herd that you walk into, you'll see that difference. You can ask any breeder and you ask them which cows have better body condition. They will always tell you the smaller frame cows. And that is because of a higher relative intake. Size and absolute growth have either a positive or negative influence on body condition and hormonal balance. The larger the animals, the poorer the body condition will be, and the larger the animals and the faster they grow in terms of absolute growth rate, the the less testosterone in the bull and the less estrogen in the cow. So they will be hormonally imbalanced. So that's why current selection, conventional selection for size and growth rate has a negative influence on both body condition and hormonal balance. Sex hormones have an expression of behavior, size, and body condition of cattle. As you can see, the bull on the left-hand side is very masculine. All his secondary sexual characteristics are exaggerated, and he has a much smaller frame and a fuller package than he would have had if he had less testosterone. If he had less testosterone, he'd be much taller, be more steer-like. And of course, in the female, it's the opposite. You get more fat, and also in behavior of calves is a reflection of hormonal balance. As you see, the young calves at young age, 3 to 4 months, when you have a cow on heat cycling and they trying to mount the cow, would be a good indication of a good hormonal balance in that herd. Masculine bulls equals feminine cows. Extremely masculine bull will give you extremely feminine cows, females, and the other way around. A lot of people seem to make the mistake that they think that certain bulls produce better heifers than bulls. That's not the case. A masculine bull will produce both masculine males and very feminine females. And they look very differently, as you can see in terms of masculinity and muscle development as well. Masculinity, testosterone is positively correlated to muscling, and negatively correlated to, estrogen is negatively correlated to muscle and positively correlated to fat. Again, masculine bulls equals your feminine cows. Extremely masculine bull on the left-hand side, thick muscling, full package, and an extremely feminine cow on the right-hand side there, with a wedge shape and a very thin neck and a smaller hump. The best we can do is to read nature correctly and accelerate the process of natural selection. That is what our role is as breeders. As I said, we can look at the complex side of nature, but that is where we go wrong, because it's impossible for us to look at all the detail and put that detail together. So man cannot improve on what nature has already provided for us. The best animals we can produce are already available in nature, particularly in the unimproved herds. In other words, the herds that have not been selected or subjected to scientific selection. All your unimproved breeds, your Criollo breeds, your native African breeds, the best animals are amongst them. So breeders, we have to identify those animals and increase their genes. That's the best, that's the only thing we can do. That's the best we can do as breeders. And you don't need to be a professor in order to breed good cattle. We can all do that, particularly if we humble ourselves and accept that the creation is far better than what we could think of creating. If we look at this chart here, what I'm trying to show you here is that in every herd, in all our herds, everyone listening to what I'm saying now, in their herd, they've got good cows. They are exceptional cows. Now, what I've done here, I've given figures here. On the cow side, 100, 90, 80, 70, 60, 50, 40, 30, 20, 10. That could be the equivalent to the genetic fertility of a cow. So you get some cows that are extremely fertile, they would be at 100. And you get cows that are still fertile, but they would be 10, depending on circumstances. The problem is that the bulls we select, the challenge is to get bulls that complement those best cows. And the red figures here, that's the challenge we have, is to get a bull that complements those cows there. And he improves all the cows, the majority of cows, and he complements the best cows. But in most cases, we get a bull that would not complement the cows, and that would make your better cows poorer, the progeny poorer, and your poorer cows a little bit better. So we're going to an average medium, where we need to select bulls that complement our best cows and give us the highest possible fertility. Progress is made via bull selection, not cow culling. It is important to cull cows, but it's more economic factor. What is more important and a greater challenge is to select the right bulls that complement our best cows. So what is a good beef animal? A good beef animal is an efficient grass converter initially. And that would be reflected in body condition. So your animal that has the highest relative intake, is the best adapted, will be the most efficient grass converter, and will have the highest inherent body condition. That is the foundational trait that you require. Secondly, they need to be hormonally balanced. Very important. And those two traits are the foundation of all the other traits are built on. Moderate milk, high meat to bone ratio, and easy care. But they are dependent on the foundation of efficient grass conversion, inherent body condition, and hormonal balance. None of the above traits are antagonistic. If we, instead of selected for maturity rate and grass conversion efficiency, if we selected for growth rate, absolute growth rate and size, that would be negatively correlated to hormonal balance. And it would, if we selected for too much milk, we'd have a negative correlation as well. So these traits that I've highlighted here are not antagonistic. They're all complementary. Appropriate selection is about adapting genotype to environment and not adapting environment to genotype. In other words, we don't want to change the environment significantly to accommodate poorly adapted cattle. We have to breed adapted cattle that are efficient grass converters and not unadapted cattle as currently, and then have to improve the environment in terms of nutrition and other factors to make them productive. So they will never give us the highest return per hectare on a sustainable basis. If you can't explain to a child, you don't understand it well enough. This is a photo of I hope he's watching, Pablo from Argentina. This is his son. I don't know what his son's name is. He's holding my book there. So if I can help him understand, then hopefully I know what I'm talking about. So basically what it means is we have to simplify cattle breeding. And as I said earlier, inherent body condition and hormonal balance. These are the foundational traits upon which all other traits must be built. It's very, very simple. But how do we breed cattle to have high inherent body condition and a good hormonal balance without getting carried away with too many figures? If we look at all these figures here, I believe it's impossible to put those figures together, all those details together, and breed a good animal. It's impossible to do it. How do we know what growth is too slow, what is too fast? How much milk is too little? How much milk is too much? What is too large in terms of size? What is too fat? What is too lean? We cannot put all that detail together. It's impossible, particularly when you consider that environments differ so much. It's just impossible to do that. And that is man's ego running away with them. We cannot, as I said, we're going to put the detail together and breed a good animal. Let's take fat, for instance. We can select for fat by various measurements in a bull and a cow because inherent body condition is good. But fat is negatively correlated to testosterone. So if we selected visually for fat bulls, we'd select also for hormonal imbalance, in other words, for lower testosterone. Similarly for lean or muscle in the cow, we cannot select for that. If we selected for that detail, we'd have a cow that's hormonally imbalanced. We'd have too little testosterone, too little estrogen, and more testosterone. So we have to look at the outcome. We have to look at the phenotype. We assess the outcome. In other words, the interaction between genotype, environment, and the modifying influence of hormones. That is what will tell us which is the better animal. And detail will be reflected in the outcome. In other words, 2+3 calving is the outcome we require. And it's very easy to do that. We breed all our heifers at 40 to 50 months of age. Those that conceive to calve at 2 years are better than the ones that don't conceive. And the ones that reconceive for the second calf at 3 are the most fertile. There's no easier way of doing it than that. It's very simple. We don't need figures. We don't need these complicated figures. We just breed for it, and the outcome will tell us which are the better animals. Coming with a bull, a full package bull that is very virile, high breeding ability is the outcome that we require. So we need to select for the outcome and not for the detail that will give us that bull. It's also important to understand that there's a very big difference between practical fertility, which is a question of inherent body condition and hormones, hormonal balance, and academic fertility, which is an animal that's hormonally balanced but needs feed to reconceive. As you can see on the left-hand side, there's a cow that calved at 2 years of age, high practical fertility, and she reconceived again to calve at 3 years on grass. The same herd, the animal on the right-hand side, is hormonally balanced, as you can see. She's very feminine, but she lacks inherent body condition. So there's no point in having a hormonally balanced animal that lacks inherent body condition. Its fertility is of academic value because you have to feed it to reconceive and calve every year. So what do we do? Yearling heifers, there's a big variation in practical fertility. It's impossible to judge them visually. So you have 100 heifers, instead of judging them visually, you breed them at 14 to 15 months for a short period, 42 days. The ones that conceive, if it's 10% or 20% or 50% or 80%, doesn't really matter. The lower the percentages, the higher the selection differential will be. So those ones that calve at 2 years of age and reconceive the second calf at 3, those are the ones that are the foundation or the nucleus herd from which you select your bulls. Very simple again. Breed all your heifers at 14, 15 months, even if only 10% conceive, and 8% out of those 10 reconceive for the second calf at 3 years of age. Those are highly genetically fertile animals, and those are the animals that we select our bulls from. The ones that don't conceive at 2 years and reconceive again at 3, we can still breed them, but they will just be there for herd expansion, and they will not be part of the nucleus herd that we breed our bulls from. Initial yearling bull selection, we select our bulls only from the most fertile cows. So if you've got 30 cows that conceive over a period of time, different years, you have a herd of 30 cows that conceived at 2 and 3 years of age. Those are the cows that you select your bulls from. And you'll select your bulls also for full package, in other words, maturity rate. And full package maturity rate will be a reflection of body condition. As I said earlier, we don't want a bull that has academic fertility. He could be hormonally balanced, but if he lacks inherent body condition, he passes a poor body condition onto his heifers, his female progeny. We don't want that. So we have to select a bull that's a full package, and you can also measure a hip, kilograms divided by hip height measurement. But visually, it's very simple. If you've got 10 bulls, it's very simple to identify the top 2 or 3 or 1 bull in terms of full package. And then obviously we just cull for bad temperament or any other serious faults. But those are the bulls that go for further selection. So those bulls would be then bred to yearling heifers. And through DNA testing, we could identify the bulls that gave you the highest proportion of progeny. Those are the ones that we require. The package reflects, again, is a reflection of growth efficiency, body condition, and hormonal balance. On the left-hand side there, you have a bull. And as I said earlier, they are extremely good bulls in all herds. This is a bull. I was traveling through Paraguay about 30 years ago. And on the side of the road, there was a group of about 30 bulls, Brangus bulls, and one bull just stood out. And this is the bull that I photographed. I don't think you can breed a much better bull than that in terms of hormonal balance and body condition. Extremely good bull. Yet on the right-hand side, conventionally selected Brangus bull, grass inefficient and hormonally imbalanced. In other words, they've selected for growth and size, And with that, they get poor inherent body condition and a hormonal imbalance. So growth, full package is extremely important. And then further yearling bull selection, you multi-sire them, as I said earlier. As you can see, the yearling bulls with the yearling heifers, and you identify the bull that has given you the most progeny. And that bull that you have identified through those selection procedures, that is the bull that you want as much progeny in your herd. So that's the bull that you would AI with. So AI, I believe, is extremely important if we identify the right bull. So a bull of that caliber, when he's 2 years old, you know which bull that produced the most progeny. You can collect semen from him, and you can seminate all your cows with that bull, and he can run as a pickup bull with other bulls that are also selected. So you use all your best bulls for AI, and then you replace them the following year. So when a bull is 2.5 years old, he's obsolete. He's replaced again by a younger bull that's a year younger next year. So you keep on the generation, half brother and half sister, your herd is closed, and by doing that, your inbreeding coefficient will be very low, and you'll make tremendous progress. When I say a herd is closed, if 10, 20 years down the line, you decide that you need other attributes that you don't have in your herd, you can always bring it in. But it's very unlikely if you start to the right type of animal. Then you just use half brother and half sister, and you just carry on forever. So how do we produce these animals, the bull that I've just spoken about? Are crossbred cows good and crossbred bulls poor? There seems to be an understanding amongst academics that a crossbred cow is extremely good and a crossbred bull doesn't breed true. From my experience and from just logic, that cannot be the case. If a crossbred cow is good, then a crossbred bull must be good as well, depending on how that bull is selected. And just to show you, give you an indication of what I'm talking about, the bull on the left-hand side and the cow on the right-hand side produce the bull that you see here. So it's a crossbred bull, beef of a Shon, and a crossbred cow, and that is a progeny. And that is what you require, that is what you want. So important steps in composite breeding. One is to choose the appropriate breeds. And we are very fortunate in that we can use AI and we can select the different breeds, particularly in Latin America and the United States. We also have the Mashona now from Africa, and hopefully the Baron and the Angoni in time. If you can use the appropriate breeds would mean that you complement certain attributes from different breeds, adaptation from certain breeds and productive traits from other breeds. So you choose the breeds appropriately, and then very importantly is you choose the appropriate individuals within those breeds. So if you decided on using Mashona bulls on Angus cows to produce a composite, it would be very important to use the right Mashona bulls as well. And as I said, with AI, we can do that. That's extremely important. And then the third step is to close the herd and select appropriately. If we close the herd and we select it inappropriately, we select for growth and size, then we end up with the problem that we have today. So we have to select for maturity rate, fertility, body condition, hormonal balance, etc. We are fortunate that we have the unimproved African and Creole breeds that we can use to improve the improved breeds. In order to progress, we have to actually go back. We have to go back. We have to fast forward back. We have to regress, rewind to fast forward to go forward. We have to go back to the future. In other words, we have to go to animals that have not been subjected to current conventional selection. In other words, the animals that have been left to their own devices and have been left to natural selection. Those are the animals and breeds that we have to go to. For instance, Creole breeds in Latin America, they're extremely good Creole breeds in Latin America. Here's a very good example of this Blanco Rejinegro bull in Colombia, owned by one Juan Carlos Robledo. Polanco is his name. I think a lot of people are familiar with him. That is an extremely good, tropically adapted European breed. And we can use that breed to very, very good advantage in tropical America to produce composites. Another one I've taken a photograph of is the Argentina, Criollo from Argentina. Similarly, animals that have obviously 500 years have been selected by nature. And the Romosviniana is another one. So we have these Criollo breeds in the Americas that we can use. But everyone, generally speaking, people look down on them and say they're unimproved. But that is exactly what we need. Unimproved by man's standards, but improved by natural standards. Through natural selection, they've been improved. And then we obviously have the Mashona as well, which is available in the United States and in Latin America now. The Mashona is available. This is an extremely good Mashona bull that I think semen is still available from. Grumpy is his name, and it currently is owned by Carretas, Rancho Carretas in Chihuahua. Mashona bull in Zimbabwe, extremely masculine. Indigenous breeds that adapt to tropical conditions and high incidence of parasites and diseases. Mashona bull, young Mashona bull, and you can see the defined muscling, which indicates his hormonal balance, and the way he's looking at you, his attitude shows he's got a very high level of testosterone. Boran breed has got very good attributes, but there's a lot of variation, as in most breeds. In the Boran as well, you get very good animals and you get poor animals. Someone has to make sure that you select the right individuals. Afri Zebu that I'm involved in breeding with, this is the combination of, in Africa we have several Zebu ecotypes. The Angoni being one, the Boran being another, and then you have the Malawi Zebu as well. So the Afri Zebu would be a combination of those African different ecotypes. Afri Zebu cow and calf, you see the body condition, extremely good body condition. Drakensberger is a breed from South Africa that is, I think, totally underestimated, undervalued, extremely good breed. But being black in South Africa, it's very unpopular because of the color. But I believe that is an extremely good individual and from a very good breed. And here's a Drakensberger cow as well. Tuli is another breed from Africa that one can use. In terms of when you compare it with a Mashona, they might not be as hardy as a Mashona, but they generally have better muscling on them. But if you can get a Mashona bull that's very well muscled, there would be no need for a Tuli. Nguni, South African breed, the most fertile breed in South Africa by far. Much more fertile than all the other scientifically improved breeds because they've been naturally selected to tough conditions, and that selection has been aggravated by the tribal situation where they are corralled at night and they're only let out for grazing maybe for 4 or 5 hours a day. So they've developed a very high relative intake and resist to parasites and diseases. The old Nguni bull, very masculine. And Nguni cross. So we can use these animals and complement them with other breeds to get better muscling if it's required. So it's very important to understand there's both an art and a science to breeding. The science is very simple, it's accelerating natural selection, as I mentioned earlier. We just have to allow nature, we have to read nature correctly, allow nature to tell us which are the better animals. The 2+3 calving cows are far more fertile. The bulls that give you the most progeny multi-siring are more fertile. So that's natural selection. So that's the scientific part of it. But reading nature correctly and being creative is also an art, as you can see in the following slide here. This is a bull saved from slaughter by my brother Vessel. No pedigree, no performance data. He lost his land many years ago, and then he had to make a living by by working at a feedlot and abattoir, and he selected this bull that came to the abattoir for slaughter, and he bought a bull at slaughter value and he used him. And this bull, the progeny of this bull, a very large percentage of his progeny have been able to breed at 14, 15 months and calve at 2 years. I'm speaking under correction, but I think it's between 50 and 80% of them calve conceive at 15 months of age, and of that, at least 80% conceive for the second calf at 3 years of age. And as you can see, also sexually early maturing bull calves. So these are progeny from an unimproved bull with no pedigree, no performance data, but selected by visual appraisal, and that is art. That comes from observation, many years of observation, where you can immediately identify a superior animal. Carretas, we've Rancho Carretas in northern Mexico. Before, very unadapted cattle, as you can see there, and with the introduction of the Mashona, has improved the body condition tremendously. So selected visually, a picture is worth more than 1,000 figures. This is a young 14-month-old bull that I just saw a photograph of, and then I decided I wanted to buy this bull. And there's nothing, no figures can tell me more than I can see visually from this young animal. I look at his full package. I know he's from an adapted background. So there's no figures, no detail that I require to tell me that this is a good animal or a poor animal. I can see it visually. Being creative again, as I said, this is a Boron Angus. Instead of using a Brahman, we can use Boron. Extremely good animal. Boron Angus in South Africa. A Veldmaster that I bred. Personally, this is one of my bulls that I bred. Another bull, Veldmaster bull. A Veldmaster heifer that calved at 18 months of age, belonging to my brother Wessel. He started a herd that were calving at different times of the year. And this particular animal's mother, she was born in the dry season. And in the wet season, she became pregnant, and she calved at 18 months in the wet season, and she's calved every year since then. The Veldmaster cow, the combination of high adaptation. This is a combination of Mashona and the early maturing type Beefmaster. Somalia, Veldmaster bull. This Veldmaster, with the Mashona influence, has made a tremendous difference in terms of adaptation, which is reflected in body condition and masculinity as well. Another one, this is a Angus Mashona composite combination. Obviously, Charlotte influence. Carretas, Veldmasters. Another one. So we don't need to, it doesn't take us long, we don't need a long period of time to breed good cattle. We can make decisions, and within a period of 4 or 5 years, you can see the results of that. Veldmaster cows, females and Carretas, look at the body condition, look at the fat deposition around the tail head. And as I said, we have to be creative. I'm amazed that not more people are interested in breeding a bison bovine cross, the beefalo, which I believe in certain parts of Northern America, where it's very cold, they would have a tremendous advantage over other cattle. Look at this low-line Hereford. Let's be creative. Let's do something different. Thank you very much. I think that's about all I can say. Hopefully it's been simple, and if there's a child in the audience, the child can also understand. And this is just a scene on my brother's property where he leases land of zebra amongst the cattle. Thank you very much.
Muy bien, Johan, muchas gracias. Muy buena presentación, como siempre. Tenemos algunas inquietudes y preguntas. Por favor, Diana, si nos haces el favor de hacerlas para que Johan nos conteste. Diana, ¿estás ahí por ahí?
Y un segundo, por favor. Aquí estoy empezando a leer.
Sí.
Bueno, son comentarios. En Ávila, España, los compradores solo quieren becerros pesados. Dice, las razas nativas no las quieren engordar a pasto. ¿Sería una solución?
Espero la respuesta.
Con los... No sé si Johan quieras ampliar el comentario. Nora, por favor. Ah, muy bien. Muy bien. Ok, bueno, voy a leer la siguiente pregunta. Ups. Sí. ¿Tú puedes comunicarle también? Puedes escribirle a Johan.
Ah, claro.
Sí, para que le digas, por favor, que si puede activar su función de interpretación. Bueno, aquí...
Johan, can you hear me? This is Nora in the English channel.
¿No te escuchó, Nora?
No, but it's...
Ok.
No escucha a Johan.
Johan, hi.
Yes.
Can you please active your interpreter to translator option, please?
So, interpretation, okay?
Yes, can you hear? Yes, English, yes. Can you confirm that you can hear me? This is Nora in the English channel.
I can hear you, Nora.
Oh, great. Okay, so here come the questions.
Okay.
Ok. Bueno.
So, what do you think about feeding grain to feed animals to fatten them?
Well, the creator created cattle to use grass, to convert grass into beef.
Lo mejor es crear ganado que sea capaz de convertir pasto en carne.
If we want to use grain, then we use
Si
pigs.
quieren utilizar grano, entonces usen cerdos.
Muchas gracias, interesante. Eso
Thank you,
creo
that's interesting. I think that's also going to answer another comment that we have here, the initial comment.
Alguien comenta, con los
Someone is asking, with buffalo,
grandes sean menos
I
eficientes.
don't agree that the larger they are, the less efficient they are. I have seen female buffalo that are medium-sized, medium-large, and they do better on natural grasslands, even managed with rational
También, si gusta hacer algún comentario.
grazing. Do you have any comments about that?
Well, generally speaking, the smaller the frame is, the better adapted animals would be in terms of nutrition. The higher the intake is. But you can get medium frame animals, in particular, I would believe, that have a very high intake. So they would still be productive. So you could still do that. But generally speaking, there's a negative correlation between size and intake. So there would also be a negative correlation between size and nutritional adaptation. In other words, body condition, if body condition is important. I don't know about buffalo, whether it's so important, but in cattle, body condition is definitely important in terms of practical fertility.
Bien, gracias.
Thank you.
¿Cómo consideran la cruza machona y
What do you think about a cross between Mashona and Angus bulls? Thinking about temperament.
Mashona Angus would be an extremely good cross. They complement each other. They're both black. If you like black cattle, they're both bold. If you like bold cattle, and the Mashona will give attributes that the Angus doesn't have. It'll increase adaptation, and it will complement very well with a high hormonal balance or fertility of the Angus. So you'd have an extremely productive composite, particularly if you combine the right individuals. And I think a lot of people in the United States that confirm that have used the Angus and Mashona cross, and also Rancho Carretas. I'm sure they can confirm that as well.
Cualquier tamaño de manada puede ser usado como
Would
una
any size herd be able to be used as a closed herd? Or what should be the minimum size for a closed herd?
I don't know what the minimum would be. I think we'd be surprised to see, the minimum would be much less than we think. If you think of, I'm not worried about inbreeding. So if you have a herd of 50 cows or 100 cows, I don't think that would be a problem. As long inbreeding is only a problem if you select incorrectly. If you select correctly, you're inbreeding the right characteristics. If you look at wildlife herds, particularly in Africa here, a lot of herds, wildlife are territorial, and they've highly inbreed. So all the poor attributes, obviously through natural selection, have been eliminated from the herds. There's another very interesting example is the Hereford herd in the Aleutian Islands that I think 120 years ago, a shipwrecked, Hereford's on the way to Russia, was shipwrecked on the Aleutian Islands. And I believe, and I speak under correction, that something like 20 animals escaped onto an island. And now after 120 years, they're highly inbred and extremely adapted to those conditions, those very cold conditions under those islands. So inbreeding is only a problem if man is involved with the selection, and we don't allow nature to do the selections for us.
Interesante comentario.
A very interesting comment.
¿Está disponible en Estados Unidos?
Is Nguni available in the United States? Do you know if there is any of this breed?
Nguni or Angoni, there's a difference. Nguni, I think you said Nguni, the South African breed. Yes, they're not available, but they are available in Australia. And I'm in contact with a friend of mine in Australia who is breeding Nguni and Baran, and I'm sure within a few years' time the semen will be available. And that shouldn't be a problem to be used in the United States or parts of Latin America. But currently, no.
Okay. Nada más muy breve, si nos puede
Just
decir
very quickly, if you could tell us
Veldmaster.
what's a Veldmaster, a cross of what?
Well, how I define a Veldmaster, I started them breeding them in Africa. They would have to have predominantly African breeds in the combination, at least half, and preferably up to 100%. So that would be that combination. So in Carretas, for instance, it's at least 50% Mashona, the rest is Angus or Charolais or Beefmaster. That would classify as a basic Veldmaster. But what makes a Veldmaster stand out is the selection criteria that we use. So the selection criteria are based on high fertility, 2+3 calving, and then the process of breeding bulls that are very fertile. And that makes a difference. So it's a selection
Bien, gracias.
that makes a big difference apart from the combination.
Okay. Hay aquí un comentario.
We have a comment here from Mr. Antillon. Can an American bison be crossbred with any of the breeds that you have mentioned?
They've done it many years ago, and initially they had a lot of problems with fertility, and they still do have problems with fertility, but there are certain herds in America, or certain individuals, small herds, that are very fertile, that do have a percentage of bison blood in them. I think about an eighth or a quarter is the most that you would require. If you have much more than that, then some of the animals will be infertile, although you do get fertile crossbreed animals. I think it's a opportunity that people just have neglected to breed. I think there's a big advantage of doing that.
Bien, algo que recomiende para algún
Do you
ambiente.
have any recommendations for a mountain environment of over 2,000 meters above sea level?
Well, I'm sure you've got some criollo breeds that are adapted. Serrana.
Así es.
You could use them in a combination with other breeds, Angus, for instance. So the two would complement each other.
Bien, nosotros. Bien, aquí en Chihuahua tenemos el llamado
But
ganado
in
de-
Chihuahua, we have what we call rodeo and criollo or corriente breeds that are well adapted.
Exactly. So what they might lack muscling,
Sí.
they might lack meat to bone ratio. So they would combine well with a breed like an Angus, for instance. I think that would be a good combination. But it's also important to make the right combinations in terms of individuals. So you've got to use the right individuals.
Eso es importante mencionarlo. Ujú.
Important to say that.
Yeah. Yes.
Entonces, salto unas preguntas porque ya
So
sé-
let me skip a few questions here that you have already answered. Is there a repository where one can see pictures of grass efficient animals? I'm sure we're going to be sharing that later, or maybe Johan can share something with us later on. A website, for example, where people can see pictures and people can train their eye. What additives would you suggest to improve fermentation? Now, we're going to skip that question because we're going to go to functional genetics and body condition.
Okay. Is there a question for me? I'm not quite sure, Nora.
No me quedó claro si había pregunta.
No, estoy tratando de optimizar las preguntas enfocadas al tema.
Okay.
Bueno, es una pregunta que se repite. Si se recomienda usar algunas razas cebuinas a nuestras razas, a nuestras vacas, si existe esa recomendación.
Is that a recommendation to add cebu breeds?
It depends where you are.
Depende de dónde se localicen.
Demanding tropical environment, I think that would be a very good option, particularly African zebus. Otherwise, less demanding environments like most of northern Mexico, United States, I would think that it'd be much easier and much better to use a tourist breed like the Mashona.
Ok. Y en el caso de las razas de doble propósito,
And for
leche,
dual purpose breeds, beef and dairy, is there something that you could mention regarding that kind of breed?
Depending on environment, if it's a tropical environment like parts of central Mexico and parts of Latin America, I think they already have tropically adapted criollo breeds, lechero, criollo. You can use them, or you could even combine something like the Mashona with the Jersey. They would be very good combination.
bien.
Con esas razas sería una buena combinación.
Muy bien. Tengo aquí una última pregunta.
I have one last question for you. Also seeing some questions come through the chat, but I think we are getting answers for everybody with these. Body condition, inherent body condition. Would you feel that that is a result of epigenetics, or what is the relationship between one and the other?
I believe it's all about intake. It's all about relative intake. The higher the intake is, the better the body condition will be. So the relative intake is influenced by adaptation. If an animal is not adapted, it'll eat less. If it's worried about parasites and diseases, it'll eat less. If it's too large, very large, it has a limitation on its intake. So it's a relatively small animal, small frame animal, not necessarily a light animal, but a small frame animal that's that's adapted to whatever conditions you have and resistant to parasites, diseases, and has a high appetite. Some animals just eat more than others. That will result in very good body condition. I think it's very simple.
Muy bien.
Muy bien. Yo creo con esto cerramos, ¿no, Diana?
Yo creo que
I
sí.
believe this is it, Diana, right? Yes, I think all these questions you've gotten an answer from the very interesting comments that we've gotten from Johan. So that's all. Thank you, Diana, for your participation. I would like to say something about Johan Zietsmann. As you know, or you must have heard, it was through these teachings that Johan brought us that led to the creation of this association. And we also created a WhatsApp group. These two initiatives led to a large number of groups on social media to share the experience with non-selective grazing and soil regeneration and ecosystem regeneration. Once again, Johan, thank you so much for everything you have given the world. Thank you, Johan.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
Ha sido un
Gracias,
placer.
Johan. Con esto cerramos la
And so this is the end of Johan's participation. And let me just share that the last participation tomorrow, the last